Good evening and welcome to the Watchmen's Report. I'm Cody Higley, and we're joined as usual by the man on the boards, Jason Foreman. And our special guest tonight is Ralph Smith, the current, you're still at large until
Right.
January. And then in January, he will be representing Marion City Council as the councilman for the third ward. So,
Correct.
welcome back to the Watchman's Report, Mr. Smith.
Thank you for inviting me, and I appreciate it.
Yeah, we've kind of last night we had a pop-up show talking about the city finances, the history of the city finances, and some of the IT issues that went along with the installation of the New World software in July of 2009. But as Jason has documented quite well, extended all the way back as far as a just a cultural thing. Now we learned before when we were delving into your background that you yourself, that's what you did. You got your American Legion Army veteran polo on there, but in the service, that's what you did is you were working on computers, right?
Yes.
So
And
as
also,
Jason, oh, go
oh
ahead.
yeah, I was going to say also I owned a computer store here in town, and I built and repaired computers. So, I,
Oh,
so
yeah. So
one
you've
of the
got,
things I did was coding, what they call coding now, but it's programming back then.
yeah. I mean, so you're very well versed in that whole world. That's not me, Ralph. I'm not an IT person. I barely know how I can function this laptop and do this show. If it wasn't for Jason, there's probably no way that I'd be able to do it. I literally just get by, and technology is not my thing. But it's kind of nice to have you know the two of you on here offering your thoughts and your analysis as two members of the IT community, and your experience with that kind of runs the gambit for much of the whole computer world. I mean, computers were just kind of a beginning thing back in the Vietnam era, right?
Yeah, I was going to clarify because you said that I have knowledge of I have a knowledge from 30 or 40 years ago. Today's computers are way beyond what I worked on, but the principles are still the same.
Yeah, yeah, and that's kind of what Jason has been stressing is that these protocols for information technology have been around for many years. The technology might change,
Right.
but the security protocols and otherwise have remained the same. Is that right, Jason?
Yeah, I mean, pretty much the segregation of duties, the physical access controls. I'm pretty sure that in the military in Vietnam, if somebody tried to enter a server room unauthorized, they might have got some hot lead, or at least got beat down and arrested. So, I mean, security, especially to the server rooms, software access controls, permission levels, these are serious in the IT community. And they have
Yeah, and
been.
then another interesting thing that we discussed last night, and then I believe that Jason also posted additional information on that subject, is the strange disappearance or termination of the Marion City Council committee that was assigned to information technology. I don't know exactly what the name of Jason, what was the actual name of that committee? Was it just IT?
It read weird, but yeah, it was basically an IT oversight committee made out of councilmen. The strange part about it is all the way through its creation until it was re-brought up 19 years later or whatever. There were no names listed and there were no meetings through all these software issues and, crazy going on. And it's just very bizarre to people in the tech industry when they see something like this. It's almost like a ghost council. And I spent the day talking to counselors. I won't put them on the record because I didn't ask, but one of them was part of the, newly revealed in around 23, right before Mr. Collins took office, and then it was immediately disbanded. So
it was disbanded in 2023.
Yeah, I'm looking through the article. I just published it, and I realized that I accidentally spelled the cover photo wrong because I was rushing to post it. Whoops, sorry about that. I'll fix it later. But yeah, this is pretty serious stuff. So if you follow the article down, I'll get back to the top. I was reading it before we came on. You go through the New World thing, 19 years, it's not mentioned. And then right around 23, just a few months before the Collins administration took office, it pops back up on the radar and then is disbanded immediately. Now, we don't know exactly why. It wasn't really cited, and I haven't been able to get to all the councilmen yet, but I've gotten to a lot of them, including some of the finance people and other officials, and nobody's been able to clarify where these meetings took place, if they took place, exactly who was on the initial board or committee, as it were. There's some speculation, but I won't really speak towards that. 2022 looks like. This is coming from council minutes, which are cited at the bottom with a directory to our in-house records that we have downloaded so that we can, research them a little bit easier than the city's website. But yeah, this is highly concerning information that just adds to the list of absolute insanity with the IT department. And I think Ralph is pretty much in the same mindset that I am, that this is all of it's just highly suspicious.
Okay, I haven't had an opportunity yet, I gotta confess, to read this article.
Yeah, I just pushed it out.
Yeah, and I know we were talking about it, and then you went down that rabbit hole to gather this information. So the information technology security is, I saw the name, I think that's what the official name was formed in the year 2002.
Right.
And then it was mysteriously disbanded and then it reappeared and then disbanded again, right?
Right. It reappeared right around 22, it looks like, from the council minutes. And
so
then
when did it disband before it reappeared? What year was that?
No, it stayed. It just didn't.
It just didn't meet.
Right. There were no names disclosed in the official summaries. There were no meetings, through all this software stuff that was going on. And a lot of people think the software stuff started, in 2020. No, the software stuff there's clues to it in one of your articles that you published, the one party control article, where they mention all the financial failures of the Carr administration, and the software reconciliation problems are mentioned. The original Silent Sabotage article has all that stuff in it as well, where there's all these crazy findings that any IT expert, I'm sure Ralph would agree, starts seeing these financial issues, thefts that go undetected for 3.5 years. Any IT expert's going to look at that and be like, where's the software controls? What's going on here? Am I wrong, Ralph?
No, being in IT before, I know if something went wrong, like let's say we had when I was doing programming, if there was a problem with the program, and it wasn't working correctly, first thing you do is you go back and you look at your work and you say, where could this have come from or what caused it? And you try to fix it.
Right.
I wanted to say something too about that committee, that information services security or whatever it was. That if that was an official council committee, right?
Yeah.
And if they did have a meeting and there's no record, they violated sunshine laws every time they did.
And one of actually two of the counselors mentioned that, and I can't speculate, but I know one alluded to the fact that apparently there were sometimes meetings that were held of various sorts outside of council chambers and they weren't public. I'm still trying to get the details on that, but that sounds like what you're saying, a violation of sunshine laws. I'd have to
Yeah.
clarify.
Yeah, because I know if you get a majority of people on a committee or council together to discuss items pertaining to council, it has to be an open meeting.
Right. Right.
Yeah, and they should be discussing just like you guys did last night, go through the different committees and say, do you have anything? Are you going to be meeting? Right, Ralph? I mean, that's how they do it, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And every meeting that we do is open to the public unless it goes into executive session. That portion, and you can only go into executive session for a particular item. So that's the only thing you can discuss during that executive session. And once it's over, then it opens back up to the public again.
Right.
Yeah, because it would be crucial if you're talking about we've seen the evidence. I mean, it's there. It's not something that is conspiracy. We do not have tinfoil hats on. It's in the minutes. It's in the audit reports.
Right.
We know that there were issues with the rolling out of the New World software, beginning at its installation in July of 2009. So this committee existed. That means that there should be committee minutes that are discussing these things.
I
And I
agree.
would think, right, gentlemen, that if you're talking about setting up permissions, which has also been questioned here by what we have discovered, wouldn't that sort of discussion take place in this committee?
That's where you would think is they would at least want to know what type of permissions that or restrictions that you were going to have in
Right.
departments, what sections, what work groups would be involved.
So Ralph, I have never asked this question before, but as a elected member of the legislative body in the city of Marion, as a councilman, what experience, if any, do you have with New World? Is this something that ever comes across your desk as a city councilman where you've seen the software or the system in action? Is there anything like that? I mean, would a councilman have any reason to?
No, there would be no reason that I can think of to know the intricate workings of New World. That would be up to the IT people and the people that work on it. They would know their particular part of that. Nobody should know the whole thing other than IT maybe, and they should only know, the technical portions of it. But as far as council goes, I haven't seen anything as far as the technical or the software coding or anything like that. I have seen New World on the screen before because I visited with Casey Courtright a couple of times and saw her working on it. But that's about the limit of my knowledge of New World.
And that brings another question in my mind. We see that a lot of the questions, I think at the last regular session, not the one this week, but the prior one, questions that should have been answered by Auditor Miranda McGinnis were being answered by the budget director, Chelsea Troiano.
Yes.
And we know the situation. We've heard it time and time again as far as a lack of competency within the auditor's office, a lack of responsiveness, so on and so forth. So does Ms. Troiano, what permissions would the budget director have, like, if any? Do you know?
Well, I know that she would probably need the permissions to go in and do the reports and do things like that. As far as allocation of funds, I think that would probably fall onto the auditor's office. But I would think that Miss Troiano would have some permissions, but not a real high level.
So she wouldn't be like, it wouldn't be able to edit anything. It'd be kind of in a, what do they call that? Read only, Jason? Is that what it is? Read only?
It's the reports that she creates.
Okay. Yeah, so that's another interesting, I think, dynamic within that. But the other, I've been accused of not understanding the direct transcription from Auditor McGinnis at that particular meeting when she was talking about changing the New World approvals or permissions for general ledger override authority.
Right.
How did you? Now, I sat there when I wrote my article that evening, and I do it the old-fashioned way, Ralph. I rewind, play, and then I transcribe. That's how I do it. I'm not techie. I don't use AI. I don't know how to do it. So, and I transcribed what she said.
Right.
Did I misunderstand what she was saying as far as how those permissions were turned off, that certain employees in the city of Marion had override authority, which should have only been within the purview of the auditor or the auditor's office? I imagine maybe the deputy auditor should have that authority as well. I don't know. But am I understanding that to where they could submit something and then they could grant an override that should have been done by the auditor? Is that how you understood it, or am I wrong?
From the conversation that took place at council, that's kind of what I understood, was that there was the ability to go in and override transactions, that and that ability existed for people that should not have that ability. And so from what I understand, what Miranda said was that she had gone in and closed that off for everybody except her, which is the level it really should be at, and be at the auditor's level.
And that's interesting to just speculate. How long has that been going on? Now, Jason, again, you found that information or references to it. And then we also heard last night from Robert Landon, who was the former auditor, that he had repeated issues where the Marion City IT guy, what's his name, Jacob?
I think so, yeah.
Was granting permissions, administrator position, to the former service director under the former mayor, Scott Schertzer, Kathy Chafin. And Landon said that he would have to repeatedly go in and get them to remove her permission. So I just wonder, like, how long has this been going on? Who has been granted this access, these rights? And this goes to the crux of what you guys are talking about, people with IT background, as a big no-no, right?
Yeah, it's a huge no-no. Segregation of duties, least privileged permissions. You should only give people the least permissions that they have to do their job. We also have reports of widespread access to New World that violate these. And I won't speak directly on exactly who yet. I'm waiting on records requests and other things like that. But allegedly, certain members of council also had access to this system, and not only in a read-only fashion.
Had access to New World?
Yes.
So again, just as Ralph said, it's not an administrative duty. I mean, or it's not a legislative duty.
Right.
So there's really no reason that any member of the legislative body, otherwise known as Marion City Council, should be engaged in that. They should be attending the council meetings and proposing legislation, so on and so forth. Under the purview of the administration, namely the mayor, the elected mayor, the elected auditor, the elected treasurer, to have access to that type of system, right?
Right.
That's what I would think. Yeah.
And only at the level they need. So the treasurer probably wouldn't have, I wouldn't think, would have as high a permissions as, say, Miranda. I wouldn't think, and vice versa. They probably have completely different permissions, I would imagine. I've never been inside the New World system. I've only read about New World. And the reason why I read about New World is because of all the lawsuits, litigations, and crazy that has gone on with this software vendor over the decades. It's well documented in some of our articles. Silent Sabotage 1 on MarionWatch.com is the big one. It breaks it down into the litigations, and I'll see if I can pull that up while you guys continue to talk. But yeah, all these server room access problems and using it as storage and using it as offices, these are huge breaches. And I'm sure, Ralph, that was a problem. That would have been a serious problem in the 70s and stuff like that in Vietnam as well. Am I correct in saying that?
Definitely, because it had to be segmented. You worked on your part of the pie, and somebody else took care of their part of the pie, and between all of us, we had a whole pie.
Right. Exactly. It's scary to me.
Yeah, very much. It is scary, and you don't know. I mean, I think that is in large part of the reason why the city of Marion is requesting a fiscal distress analysis from the auditor of state. Wouldn't you agree? I mean, they don't really know the scope and the depth of this situation. I think largely probably because of the software system, and we don't know how much manipulation. I mean, is that accurate, do you think, Ralph?
Yeah, I think that with the fiscal analysis thing, I want our problems to be resolved, but I'm scared of the pain that it's going to cause getting it to that point,
Right.
Because we could end up in a situation of where, depending on what they find on their initial review, we could end up in a situation of where we have to ask the auditor of state to do anything. We couldn't appropriate money unless they okayed it. Kind of like a bankruptcy in private business. So it's kind of scary, but we need to get the problems resolved. But I hate for it to go to that extent.
Unfortunately, the timeline of events and what most council people that I'm speaking to, and the public now, largely, interestingly enough, has turned their sights towards this. Unfortunately, it's got to happen. They're going to have to take a look at this. And we strongly recommend putting the information technology permissions and things like that back under the actual actionable oversight, of council or some kind of a legislative body, because obviously they can't keep the ship on the water, without hitting an iceberg. We started calling it the Exxon Valdez and the team chats. It's just such a shipwreck, man. It's bad. Permission issues, widespread access, server room breaches, after hours access, reconciliation module not being on, software controls not being present, disabled, or misconfigured. This is from a third-party vendor and admitted by the former administration, before the third-party vendor even, found it. We were theorizing about it. The entire team has told you in the group chat, Cody. You've seen all the stuff. We've been talking about the software controls since way before it was ever even announced, because these are clear signs when you start seeing things like I said before. 3.5 years, nobody caught the theft. Apparently, Twyla reported it. they targeted her for it. There was all kinds of crazy going on. I'm well aware of all that. Before I even met Twyla face to face, we knew about that. These are all clear signs in IT, and I'm sure in finance it should be anyway, that there's something seriously wrong. And the auditor of state mentioned many times in the Silent Sabotage 1 article, which is extremely long but very informative, that they need to get their shit straight, because 26 point whatever million dollars in the hole, and all these problems and software issues and craziness going on in the 2000s 2010s was just absolutely out of control. And I'm not surprised why the auditor of state would have been upset by that. Of course.
Well, I was kind of thinking that when we're talking about these misplaced permissions, how do you go about getting all of those fixed? Somebody's going to have to come in and look at every single one and see, yes, who does this allow? Who's allowed to have this? Who's allowed to have that? And if it's misplaced, they're going to have to correct it. That's going to take some time.
It will, and there should be. I know I've talked about it a couple of times. I'm not sure how your guys's most of the systems you've worked on, I've never even seen. They're so cool, but I've never seen them, of course. But
you have to be as old as I am to see them.
in my day in IT, growing up in it and being in it my whole life, I was always taught about something called an access matrix. I'm sure it goes by different names, but it's like a cookie cutter permission thing that says this person gets this permissions, from the start. This person gets this permissions for this job. This person gets, and anything above and beyond that's got to be approved. And I don't think that's existent. And I don't think they have a trouble ticket system. And I'm sure that you guys had work orders and everything was tracked. It's digital now, but back then I'm sure it was on paper of some kind. And there wasn't anything done without that. Am I correct in saying that?
Correct. We would get the report. It was on an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. You filled out all the blanks. That came to our office, and I would go out and do it, or we'd dispatch somebody out to do it. And when we got done, we signed it off, and it came back in, and we told the people what was wrong, how we went about fixing it, and then filed it.
Right. When I reached out to Mr. Rollins today briefly, asking him why was this disbanded, he really doesn't know. And he's always struck me as a very transparent guy to me anyway. He's nice and pleasant and honest. And I've talked to a couple others. I hope he doesn't mind me, discussing it, but he had a couple of strong words. I'll leave him off the record for now, but I'm sure if he wants to talk about it, he'll reach out. But he was like, I don't know what was going on. It just, it popped up again. And then all of a sudden, and I was right in the middle of all this permission stuff coming out too. You would think that they would want to keep something like this in place, or I would anyway, to oversee this crazy. You know what I mean?
I think it should be in place today, actually.
Right. And I think it needs to be moved immediately back and actually done. Obviously, it was
it should be a working committee, not a shell corporation or whatever.
And I don't know if there were meetings being held because they're not in the summaries, obviously, or I would have found them. The team would have found them. I would have found them. They're not there. So there's no real names listed in the summaries. I don't know if the summaries weren't done properly or what's going on, but I'm going to continue investigating in that. But this is just adding to as you know, you've been keeping up on the crazy train. It's just a huge list of stuff, and it's so long now. And I mean, even Dennis, one of the co-founders, former Detective Dennis Potts, he's like, man, this is starting to look real bad. Almost like I hate to call it an intentional sabotage, but at least an intentional omission. I know that we've been told by multiple members of the Collins administration that the Ohio Auditor of State has told them that they were aware that the former administration, speaking of the former auditor, Carr and deputy auditor, were the only two that held the secrets of the workaround reconciliation process. And that's another huge thing. You should never have your software controls off for 10, 15 years. It's unacceptable. and how nobody in the administration said this is unacceptable, and did something about it is beyond me. And I can't even fathom why, but I know that they were off. I know they weren't working right. It's been admitted. It's a fact. The auditor of state knew that they didn't, carry over the secrets. We know that they didn't pass these secrets on to the incoming auditor, Mr. Landon. We know what happened with all that crazy, which again was part of the software control thing. It should have been picked up. And all that went down. And now we're continuing to see permission issues that are being uncovered. And it just leads anybody in the IT industry to think, well, if they're still changing permissions that are inappropriate, what other permissions are in there? And does people still have access to the system that aren't supposed to?
Right.
It's a logical conclusion.
Until you go in and check it from top to bottom, front to back, you're not going to know that.
Right.
How long has Jacob been in charge of IT for the city of Marion? Does anybody know?
I have no idea.
I'm not
I believe he was in there during the Schertzer administration, correct?
Correct.
Jason? Yeah. So he would probably be a pretty good one. I mean, he's been around for a little while, to at least talk to. Maybe sit down and ask some pointed questions from that committee, perhaps, if it gets reestablished.
Right. Yeah. So Ralph and I are pretty much in massive agreement that there's literally no way possible that all these widespread permission issues and granting permissions to New World and the physical security breaches and all the other crazy in the laundry list wasn't known by IT. You just can't explain that away, unless he literally just wasn't paying any attention. Literally. Ralph, can you explain any other rationale besides there's no way he wouldn't have known?
All I know is in my past experience, if a problem came up, one of the first things you look at is the IT portion of it, the software, or the hardware, one or the other. And if you were having a problem, something wasn't working right, so you went back and you checked it until you found it.
Right.
And we had records of all that. And so I would assume that that's the same thing, same procedure that would be used by the city of Marion.
Right, or should be, right. And right. The IT guy, it's his job to know what, the IT standards are in the municipality, especially where he's, basically this IT infrastructure is the vault door, for lack of better terms. You get past that, everything's there.
All you have to do is get the individual doors open then.
Right. So it's absolutely his duty to safeguard that vault door. And part of that is ensuring that the permissions are correct, that the access level is correct, no matter what anybody else is saying. You know what I mean? I know he has bosses and stuff, but I mean, MPD's right there, the county sheriff, he knows how to get out there. So if somebody's asking him to do something that is illegal or unethical, absolutely, he should be dealing with that. I know I've gone through permission wars, and I've shared screenshots with the team from former coworkers where I've actually dealt with stuff like that. And the answer was no. Like, will you give me access to the system? No. And that was my boss.
And if he's getting requests to do things that are improper, city council, and I know myself on city council, if we have a question about whether something's proper or improper, first place we go to the law director. We say, what do you think about this? This is what's happening.
Yeah, it's just bananas, and it's so complicated. I mean, I did reach out to Bill. I won't detail exactly what I said to Bill, but I politely nudged him. They need to be asking the IT staff that was present from the install forward all the way to now what they know about permissions, access control, anything on this laundry list of crazy. Because
Russell's been around for 32 years, Ralph. I mean, a Democrat, fully entrenched. in the city, because there's only like one person that could ever run against him. His license to practice law that lives in the city of Marion. He would be aware of this kind of stuff if there was some shenanigans going on, right? I mean,
Well,
you definitely think that.
if it was brought to his attention, yes. Now, I can't really say that. Maybe they never brought it to his attention. Maybe they intentionally shut him out. I don't know. Uh, if that's the case, then I would say that he has, plausible deniability on that. But if they went to him and he asked about it, sure, he would know.
But isn't it also just odd that they propose, so the new Democrat government comes in January of 2008 to include a Democrat mayor, Scott Schertzer, a Democrat auditor, Kelly Carr, a Democrat treasurer, Tom Panet, Democrat law director, Mark Russell, and also 7 out of the 9 members of council being Democrat.
Right.
And then in the fall of 2008, while they're talking about tightening the belt and laying people off, and times are tough, and our expenditures are well exceeding our receipts, then they propose upgrading their software system at a cost of almost $1 million. Does that make sense?
Well, it would only make sense if you did a cost analysis on it, and sometimes you have to spend $1 million to save $2 million, and if that's the case, then yeah, it would make sense. But if that wasn't done, or if that wasn't the results of the analysis, then no, it would not make sense.
Well, it'd be interesting to me to know if their old system had as many back doors, had as many opportunities for customization or manipulation. And we know that New World obviously is, full of holes. So was that done deliberately?
Yeah, I'm not familiar with what the system was before.
Jason, do you know off the top of your head? I know I pulled it up in one of the articles but
I can't remember right off the top of my head.
They were just saying that it was going to increase efficiency and the functioning between departments is why they expended that kind of money.
Yeah, pretty much.
We're talking in $2008, Ralph. I mean, before all this
Right.
Obama and Biden inflation that has wrecked our currency. That is a lot of money. And again, during a time that you're seeing your income as a city decline substantially because of a rapid decrease in property tax receipts, and then also a lot of people were losing their jobs, so the corresponding reduction in the receipts of income taxes.
Right.
And they make a decision to do that. It's just odd. And then a year later, they remove Brian Carr, who was a longtime supervisor of the utility billing department. And he had been a vocal critic of New World. And he specifically said that I do not want New World because it's not compatible with utility billing. And Mr. Carr, I believe, had been in there for over a decade at the time, and he was hired during the Republican administration of Jack Kellogg. So then Schertzer comes in and removes him from that position and says, well, I'm the mayor and this is a partisan role. I have every right to clean house, basically, is what he says. And he says, I'm going to put somebody in there that is aligned with my philosophies. And I'm going to make sure that I put somebody who is duly qualified. So who does he put in there? He puts in Brenda Dyer Nwaso, who was working as a bank teller right before she became the supervisor of utility billing.
Mm-hmm.
She goes along with New World, doesn't say anything, doesn't complain. She's a dutiful soldier. And then we find out 3 years later that she had embezzled $34,000. So strange coincidence. And again, that utility billing department is by far the highest volume of transactions coming into the city, people paying their utility bills. And in 2008 or 2009, that was $4.5 to $5 million of the city's transactions of funds. So if you were to try to manipulate things, you're going to want to go after something like that has a lot of funds, but then there's also a lot of transactions to where it's going to be difficult to track if you are manipulating it through one of these back doors, one of these mini back doors. That's a theory. That's a theory. I'm just speculating here, and that's part of solving mysteries is you have to have theories. Does that sound like a plausible theory, Ralph, or am I tinfoil hat?
No, it sounds very plausible. And also, if you add to the top of that, password sharing, that's like the eraser that erases a lot of stuff off the books, so that you can't really tell who did what. I understand that there are ways that you can backtrack that and find out, and that's being done. But at the time, I'm sure that they if they had an intent to do harm to the city or to do benefit themselves, then that would be the place to do it. The place with the highest volume, the most transactions, and password sharing, and you've got your way.
Yeah, and the other thing, I've mentioned this a couple of times already on previous shows, but I think it bears being stressed, is the mindset. A lot of crimes are of emotion. Somebody just loses it. They walk in on their spouse in bed with somebody else and they kill them both. It's crime of passion is what we call it.
Right.
Majority of your other crimes are crimes of opportunity. Literally, you walk down the street and you notice somebody left the door to their car open and there's a purse in the driver's seat. And you say, oh man, I don't see anybody around here. I can go over here and grab this purse and I'll get away with it. Very few crimes are non-emotional, that are thoroughly thought out and planned. Very, very few. So it sets what Brenda Dyer Nwaso did of stealing $34,000 while supervisor of the utility billing department in the city of Marion, kind of sets that mindset in question to say she probably thought that she could get away with it. And why would she think that? Were the controls in the culture so loose or so corrupt, so easily manipulated that she thought that she could? Because nobody's going to throw their life away for $34,000. Her salary.
My opinion of that, Cody, is that, and I'll give a little backstory here. I had a couple of daughters that worked at banks. Now you say Brendan also worked as a teller at a bank. Well, I had two daughters that did the same thing. And I know that the controls at a bank, especially for tellers, is very strict. They had the balance. If they caught them with their drawer unlocked, they were in trouble. If they caught loose change in their drawers, they were in trouble, because that could be, taking customers' money and sticking a couple of quarters or something in your drawer. So they were very, very strict on that. Now, possibly when Brenda came to utility billing, right away, being used to that very strict environment, right away she noticed that, hey, this is pretty lax here. I think I can get by with some stuff here. And so she does a little test or something. Nobody ever picks up on it. No alarm bells ring in the system. And so $1 leads to two, that leads to five, that leads to 100, pretty soon you're in deep.
Right. And the mere fact, like Jason said, that it took 3 years. And then all the while, this is pre-Landon, people. So don't be all say, this is pre-Landon. This is Kelly Carr time. So you're going to tell me that all the audits, we had clean audits, everything was fine before June of 2020, no problems, nothing to see here. They didn't catch it. And what you were just saying, Ralph, I mean, I work in the financial industry. Yeah, if you force balance as a teller or like any of that stuff, you're gone. It could be $1. If a teller forced balances her drawer for $1 that isn't there and just puts in the system that yes, it was there, and that's caught, most places will fire you.
Yeah.
But it's so sure as hell doesn't take the private sector 3 years to figure it out.
I mean, not unless the software controls aren't on.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I was going to say that if you're doing proper reconciliations, that should have been picked up right away. But if the controls aren't there, you can go in and do what you want to and make it look legal.
Right. And another thing is the software being installed. I know we've said this and Ralph has agreed with it before, but the people need to understand that software installations at this level are extremely chaotic. Anybody that's ever done something like this or moved a data center or put in any kind of large scale software or hardware replacements, it opens the opportunity for malicious actors because for several reasons. But one of my favorites is you create something called service accounts. So I'm sure that Ralph probably knows it by a different name, but basically what it is a test account. And you can give it permissions to whatever you want. It should be tracked in writing by a ticketing system, but they don't have a ticketing system. And these service accounts sometimes forgot to be deactivated. They forget to deactivate them. And that's why a ticketing system is very important, because you can go back over, you know what I mean, and oversight and be like, oh, whoa, this wasn't deactivated. Service accounts should be deactivated when they're not being used. That doesn't mean you activate it in January and then whatever experiment or transition you're doing ends the next January and that service account is enabled the whole time. No, in the real world, a service account is disabled every day unless it's being used. So there's all kinds of different scenarios that could have went into play here, and we just don't know because there was it's so crazy, and there were so many people with unauthorized access and unauthorized permissions, or permissions that were highly inappropriate for their job, or people who had permissions that didn't need permissions at all, which is what we're coming across now and trying to get verified. And I won't speak on it directly as far as names go yet, but I have been made aware that perhaps maybe people on city council may have also had higher level privileges to the New World system,
which I think should not be. I would not want any privileges in the New World system at all.
right?
Because I don't want to be among that group that is scrutinized and said something bad happened and here's the people that had access. I don't want to be in that group.
Right.
Now I have to ask you this question, Ralph. We've heard recently from former Mayor Schertzer, and he encouraged people to go back and listen to his numerous interviews on that Left Wing podcast in Marion that he did during that time, 2020, 2021, 2022, and then he ultimately left office New Year's Day of 2024. So they were hammering that this all happened with the mispayment, the IRS mispayment of $1.228 million. And then they weren't reconciling. Why do you suppose that he didn't initiate a call to the auditor of state for a fiscal distress analysis during his term?
Well, I really can't speak directly to that, but I would just imagine that he either thought it wasn't that serious or he wasn't being given all the information. I have to give
Well,
him the benefit.
he was saying in those interviews, I've listened to him.
I haven't heard it.
He was saying that it was very serious.
Oh, okay.
So out of one side of your mouth, if you're saying, oh, this is serious, Robert Landon destroyed the city, he's evil, all this stuff, but then you don't do the other, you don't say, hey, I'm going to put my money where my mouth is. I think this is serious. Everything's effed up. So let's get some help in here, boys. Let's call the auditor of state. We're going to see where we stand, do this fiscal distress analysis. And the reason I pose that question, Ralph, is that if you knew that the system was messed up and that you had been manipulating it for years, you don't want to shine a light or
True.
open that can of worms. It's easier just to point the finger at somebody, distract people, say, this is it. This is what messed it up, especially if you know that it's a powder keg and that it's going to explode, that it's not sustainable. Most of your crimes and schemes, they have an end date. They don't go on for years or decades. It's a fairly short-term scam or something going on. And again, that's speculation. Let me make that clear. But as far as motive, and I think it's a legitimate question. If you are sitting there saying that this situation is bad and all this stuff, then why didn't you do anything? Why didn't you do anything to try to rectify it?
One of the other things that I was thinking of was it could very well be that at the time, and whether this is true or not, I don't know, but at the time he may have thought that his problem wasn't really a system problem, but it was a human error problem. He may have thought that Landon was the whole problem, and therefore, if you got rid of Landon, that would end the problem. That could be his mindset at that time. Whether the rest of that is true or not, I don't know. Like you said, it's speculation, but it is a very possible theory.
It's also interesting to me, and I'm not sitting here trying to, I try to be as objective as I can, and to look at different things, look at the evidence, the facts, as we can collect them. I didn't know Robert at all before I kind of started this endeavor. I have no vested interest in anything, but when you review things, when you review the history and you review the facts and the evidence, and you go back in time, you can kind of piece things together. And again, I find it a very interesting development that he unseats Kelly Carr, the longtime auditor for the city of Marion that came in that incoming Democrat class in January of 2008. He unseats her, and on election night, they go after him for this bogus, and he was fully vindicated. And we've talked about it in prior episodes. We've showed people the campaign flyer in question that they went after him for. I mean, just completely just ridiculous. And not only did they lose at the municipal court level, but then the longtime Democrat law director, appeals it, spends extra money, spends extra time, energy to try to go after him when it was a completely bogus, just lawfare. That's what they call using the legal system against somebody to try to destroy them. Even though you know you're not going to win on the merits, you just do it to try to bleed your opponent dry and to slander them.
Well, the damage gets done no matter what.
Yeah.
No matter how the verdict is, the damage is done.
So again, when you put all this other stuff in there, between Brian Carr, between Brenda Dyer Nawaso, New World during the Great Recession, the whole gambit, and you say, is that why they really went after him? Is because they did not want somebody who might get into that office, who might uncover all this shit? I don't know. It begs a lot of questions, Ralph.
It's a possibility, and you know there have been crimes that way before. So.
Exactly, and I'm glad you brought that up because I love like the crime shows like Law and Order. I love Discovery ID. I love a good mobster, you know, Sopranos and Goodfellas and Casino and stuff. We accept, and those are some of the most beloved forms of popular culture in American society. We accept corruption and all these intricate schemes and stuff going on in our movies and in our television shows. That's what makes a good movie for us. And we can have a bunch of different complex plot lines and we'll watch it and we'll understand what's going on. But then we get in the real world and we're clutching pearls when we find out, oh my God, there was a corrupt politician. You know, does that, I mean, why is that like that, Ralph?
Yeah, I think it's human nature because I know you love to watch a show that's got shoot 'em ups and they're every scene has a car chase down the street and they're destroying cars left and right. They're shooting at each other. But if you walked out your front door and heard one gunshot, you'd be really screaming about it.
Exactly.
We like the entertainment part of it, but we don't like the real part. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't believe that that can happen, and probably does happen, and may be happening now. You know, somewhere it's probably happening now. But I know that it happens a lot more in the movies. But I think a lot of ideas are picked up from movies and tried too.
I think so. And I'm a fairly cynical son of a bitch, Ralph. So like I give people I mean, I don't give them a lot of credit. I think most people are a bunch of crooks. Not everybody, but a lot of people are. And especially if you get in a situation, it's like the famous quote, all power corrupts, absolute power corrupts absolutely. So if you're in a system where you are all powerful and you can get away with things, there's a good chance you're probably going to be corrupted by it, even if you aren't corrupt when you come into it. So that goes back to the Brenda Dyer Nawaso situation where, you know, she thought she could get away with it.
Yeah, because everybody was kind of. I know that if you've got all Democrats in the administration, all Democrats on council, that's bad. If you've got all Republicans, that's bad too. I think you need a mix. You need a mixture of ideas in order to have the best possible solutions. And I always remember a quote back when I was in income tax and financial accounting. But if two partners always agree, one of them's not needed. And it's the same way as if you've got everybody on council as a Republican and every vote's going to go the same way, you only really need one vote because the rest of them are going to go that way too. So you need those ideas. You need people to present opposite ideas from what you present. Uh, and that gives you a good basis for common understanding and probably the best basis to make a good decision.
As long as they're not too like really out in left field. You know, if you give me a good Kennedy Democrat, like well, we can sit down and we can hash things out. But you give me what passes for
Right.
most of your Democrats nowadays. I don't know if I want to incorporate any of their ideas into my policy platform.
Well, and when you run into anybody that is unwilling to converse with you, unwilling to talk, unwilling to uh, you know come to an agreement, I mean, there's not much you can do about that, and that's bad on either side, Republican or Democrat. We need to have common sense and realize, yeah, we have different beliefs, but not all of my beliefs are 100% correct. And not all of yours or anybody else's are 100% correct. So what we need to do is come together where we can and agree to disagree on the others.
Yeah, no, I think that's definitely a good approach. Well, do you have any final questions, Jason, on the IT, and then we'll just maybe briefly talk about this week's council meeting, and then we'll wrap up the show.
Just from, I'm not really questions, but I'll give a statement. From the information that I've been getting from current and former officials, and you've seen the screenshots, I send them uncensored to my team. I don't crop them. They see, who it's coming from and the conversation back and forth. I find it highly, highly improbable that the senior administration under Mayor Schertzer did not know about these software control problems and all the other crazy, associated with the software and loose controls, financial or IT related. So I will go on the record and say that.
Well, and in support of your statement, I will call up an old cliche. If it looks like a duck and smells like a duck or walks like a duck, it's a duck. So if it looks suspicious and the records show that it to be suspicious, then there's probably something there.
Yeah, exactly. All right, well, let's run through kind of a breakdown, very brief discussion here of some of the hot topics from this week's council meeting and maybe a few other things here. First off, Ralph, I got to ask you, what do you think about Burka Gate? Was it blown out of proportion?
Well,
Ridiculousness? Just trying
I know
to,
Ron.
yeah.
I know
what are your
Ron.
thoughts on it?
Ron does not have a racist bone in his body. He's married to a Vietnamese woman, for one thing. So he doesn't have a racist bone in his body. And Ron does not want to offend anybody. I mean, there's just nobody that he wants to offend. I have to agree that, yeah, it was a momentary bad judgment. You forward something. Sometimes you're scrolling through and you see something, I like that. And you click forward, bang, it's gone. You don't give it another thought. And then all of a sudden something comes up. I think that Ron did exactly the right thing. He apologized. He admitted that it was a bad decision. And that should be the end of it.
Yeah, I thought it was ridiculous. I mean, it's political satire. He didn't add any additional commentary. He literally shared an image that is meant to, maybe some people find it funny, but it should be also thought provoking as far as the dynamics and it's not like that society doesn't exist. It's not like we don't see a civilizational battle between Western civilization and the Islamic world or
Right.
other parts of the world. I mean, but in the end, it's free speech and it's political satire. So get over it. My God, like I couldn't believe. And then you look at who shared it, who was making a big deal out of it, and you
Right.
say, people in glass houses shouldn't cast stones there, fella. That's kind of how I looked at it. but I felt bad for him. I mean, I did. I was just like, this is ridiculous that they're going after probably one of the nicest fellas that you'll meet.
Yep.
You know,
So
um,
I reached out to a friend of mine in Florida that I used to work with in the telecommunications industry, who is a Muslim woman. And I asked her if she found that offensive. And she said, I quote, "It's a burqa. No, I don't find it offensive. And also, I don't think the Muslim mayor is going to make any changes to Shira law for the city. It's going to be almost impossible for that to happen in the United States. And if any changes are made, we don't have the jail space or the prison space for these small minor violations that would be happening. But yeah, I don't find it offensive." That's a direct quote from my Muslim woman friend in Florida.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
it sounds like a good logical quote.
yeah, I don't know. I thought it was really stupid. It was a desperate attempt at political assassination. We got lawfare that is being used nowadays, 21st century politics, and you also have political assassination, just of character. And then hell, they're assassinated, tried to assassinate Trump, physically, and they did successfully assassinate Charlie Kirk. So, these tactics are extreme that are utilized primarily by the opposite side of the political spectrum, and they're very concerning. But for somebody to share a satirical political meme, uh, I nobody that was just, I would have given them the middle finger is what I would have done.
But and what I thought of when I first saw the comments and things on it was that Ron had been involved in a contested political race where he won. So there's naturally some hard feelings, not necessarily hard feelings, but some animosity there. And then I thought back to my race back in May, where I was contested, and some people there tried to do some crazy stuff too. Fortunately, it didn't stick; it didn't work. But that happens in politics, and especially when you're in a contested race or at odds with somebody else. Anything can be done. It's sad that it's true, but it is.
That's unfortunate. All right, so let's go to the next topic. Just here, real briefly. I'll try to keep it short. Economic Development Director gets passed by council. It did its 3 readings. There's going to be a joint venture between the city of Marion and presumably, even though they haven't signed off on anything contractually, with the county of Marion. My only thing with that, Ralph, as a dyed-in-the-wool free market conservative, show me where government has been the driver of economic development. The only thing that government should do when it comes to economic development is get government the hell out of the way. Make your municipality attractive to investment from private capital in the free market the best you can. You're not going to have some bureaucrat that's going to be successful, or at least the most successful or the most efficient at economic development. So that was just from a philosophical standpoint. That was my criticism of it. I guess if we're dealing with big government, and if we're conceding that, then I suppose you got to play. I guess. My other, and I think there's been quite a bit of that criticism, is why didn't they put mandatory requirements as far as education, not preferred, mandatory education, work experience, certifications, the things that are going to be indicative of success, not guarantees of success. You can have some credentialed egghead that might have done well at another job that sucks in Marion. I mean, that's a possibility. But I think that if you made it mandatory, education, direct work experience, certifications, that probably would ensure that you get a little bit higher quality person. Do you agree with that? I mean, is that is that criticism fair in your opinion?
Well, yeah, I think that if you require somebody to do that, the more you require, the higher your pay is going to have to be.
And
So
it's pretty ample. That
yeah,
120-ish, 125,000 is actually very, I looked that up too. I looked through to see who the other comparable municipalities, even, down by Columbus where they're wealthier than us Po folks up here in Marion County. It's going to be a very competitive salary.
but yeah, I agree with you. Government has never earned a penny in its life. Um, government takes money; it doesn't give money. And if it does give money, it's your own money. It's given back. You know,
Mhm.
tax returns, uh, whatever Y2K checks, they're all your money. Then they're handing it back to you, and you think it's great because they gave you money. Well, they didn't. They just gave you back part of what they took. Um, and I agree that private sector would probably do a much better job than the government would do as far as having an economic development director. The problem is that we don't have that at the time. So we need something because yeah, we're on a good roll right now. And I think that's from work that has previously been started and cultivated and it's continuing, but it's going to start going downhill. If you don't prop it up, it's going to keep going downhill. So you need something to keep it going. So the economic development director would be the way to spur that interest. Now it's still going to work a lot, I think, like Can Do did. You're still going to have to go out. You're going to have to find people. You're going to have to find businesses that are looking to expand, and then you're going to have to convince them or market the city of Marion as a good place for them to land. And if you can't do that, whether it's public or private, it's not going to happen. But right now, we need somebody. We need to get that job done so that we don't start going down, because once it starts down, it's hard to turn it back up again. So, and that was one of the reasons that I voted for it. And another thing is that, and I mentioned it at the council meeting, but I was made aware that if a person has the oversight of the TIF funds, then you can actually pay them as the TIF oversight director. And that would not take money out of our general fund in the city. So that was one of my suggestions. I got that suggestion from Wesley Davis.
I know she told me. I was talking with her first, and I said you need to reach out. I said reach out to Ralph, reach out to Twyla, reach out to whoever on council, and let them know that. I said, or better yet, come to council and present on it. So
she did that.
And she's very very well educated and knowledgeable on those types of systems. So for somebody like Mark Russell, I think he kind of tried to shit on the notion, if I recall, during the council meeting. I think I would listen to Wesley Davis and somebody from Jerome Township than somebody that farms out summary judgment motions to a law firm, instead of just doing the work themselves.
She had three attorneys take a look at that, and all three of those said, yeah, it's capable of being done. And if they can be, the county can do the same thing because they have county TIF. So the county could do, and so it would be a net zero out of our pockets. It would come out of the TIF funds. So, and as far as the not having a contract with the county yet, which is, I don't see a big problem with that, because now that we have approved this, the earliest that it can take place is 30 days. In the meantime, the county and the city get together, they draw up the contract and come to an agreement. If they can't do that, at the end of 30 days, we just don't make it come into law.
Do you think they have somebody in mind already for that position, Ralph?
I suspect they do. I suspect that they're going to post it and try to get other people to come in and do that. I think they would just about have to. But yeah, I think that they've got a preference or preferred person that they would like to see there. But I've done the same thing when I hired people for GTE. I had persons that I looked at and I said, I'd really like to get this person. But as you're interviewing, somebody else pops up and they look better than the person you really preferred. So sometimes that happens.
All I can say is this. My suggestion to Mayor Bill Collins, whoever, because he's going to make the ultimate decision, it sounds like, right? Since it's going to be under, the job description says reports to the mayor. It's not going to be reports to the mayor and the commissioners, right?
Right. He's going to have oversight on it, but the commissioners, the mayor, and city council will all have an input into that, because when you put somebody in that job, you basically have to go through council for it.
But make sure you get a good person. Not only is it critically important, but you're already getting criticized for the expenditure of these funds when the city has officially acknowledged fiscal distress. So
I agree.
You're going to get tarred and feathered at the next municipal election unless you get this right. It cannot be a nepotistic hire. It can't be somebody, because that's what they're all saying. That's what the criticism is.
Mm-hmm.
Hire, recruit, do whatever you got to do. Hire somebody with the appropriate education in that field of study with proven work history and success. And if you do that, people won't get on you. But if you make a nepotistic hire of somebody that on paper does not appear to be directly qualified, then you're going to get crucified.
I agree.
And the city may not end up benefiting. It could be another can do. It could be this position that we had back in the 1980s that failed and was replaced by can do. So
Right.
Do it right. I'm just telling you, do it right. So the other thing, real briefly here, building code department, is it a good thing for commercial building code? Got to stress commercial, because Marion historically hates the idea of a residential building code, and I agree with them, Ralph, on that. But on the commercial, I don't know. I've listened to the different experts and whatnot. What are your thoughts on that? Will it help get the ball rolling with some of these commercial redevelopment projects?
Well, I've talked to a lot of people, a lot of business owners, about this, and they're kind of split 50-50. Some people don't have a problem with the state. They seem to be able to breeze right through it. Other people, they're sitting and waiting for months, on inspections. And it's not just one inspection, it's 3 or 4 or 5 inspections, because you have to have plumbing, you have to have electrical, you have to have construction or structure, and then you just all kinds of different inspections that has to be done. And each one of those takes time. And so if you're waiting 30 or 60 or 90 days on an inspection, your timeline on that job could easily run out to a year past where you expected. In the meantime, project costs go up. So it's costing you money in in construction materials. It's costing you money in time for your employees. And so I think that in that respect, we would very, very probably want to get a commercial building code, because that would help the construction people, the employers, to get through the process a lot quicker. On the other hand, I wish we had a company here in Marion that could do that, but we don't. And so the company that they're looking at is out of Columbus. And the guy has said, he's appeared at council 2 or 3 times. He was there Monday night. And he has said, anytime that I need to be here, I will be here. If you have a problem and you call me, I will come up here and see what your problem is. And that's a promise that he's made. The only thing we can do is, if he starts breaking his promise, we can try to get rid of him, try to get another company. Competition is a great thing.
Yeah, and I mean that's kind of where I'm at. Like you said, there seems to be kind of an even split between contractors, construction professionals, as to their opinion on whether or not this would be beneficial for the city of Marion. Obviously, you want to make it as cost effective and as efficient from a time standpoint. You don't want waiting on the state inspector to come in, adds another 2, 3, 4, 6 months, whatever it is, to getting some 130-year-old building renovated. We want to move that along quickly. We've seen some of those projects that Luke Henry and others downtown, and you're like, man, that's taking a long time. So I get it. So hopefully, if you're a professional that does contracting work for commercial properties, whatever, rehab, new build, whatever, and you're hearing this, if you're not aware of it, then make sure you contact your city officials and let them know what your thoughts are. Because I think that's what you guys are doing, is you're trying to hear everybody out and make an informed decision, right?
Exactly. We are supposed to go with what our constituents want. That's why we're here. We represent the citizens of Marion to the city administration. So we're kind of the go-between, and we have the authority to set the laws. So based on what the people say is what we should be introducing to the city, and say, this is what our people want, this is what we want. And like I said, it's kind of 50-50. I know I have a friend who just purchased a business here on Bellefontaine Avenue, where I live, down the street. And they've been waiting over 30 days for an electrical inspection. They could have been opened before that, if the inspections were done in a timely manner. And then my wife and I were talking about it earlier today, that only loses business for them because they're not getting the income. But if they're not getting the income, the city's not getting the income tax from it. The county's not getting the property tax for the upgraded property. So everybody's losing money on it. And I think if we can speed that process up, now it's going to be a little more expensive, because they're going to have to raise the prices to cover the cost. But where they're going to make the savings is going to be on the wait times, because if you pay $600 extra up front, you're not losing $1,000 by waiting another 2 months on something else.
Right. And this is another example, folks, of what government bureaucracy at the state level. Okay. So there was a time that the state did not have this sort of oversight or regulatory burden on our country. And things were less expensive. Things were built with a quicker turnaround time, you name it. So I would encourage Wesleyan Davis, if you're out there listening, Ben Weber, um, Senator Bill Reineke, any of these elected officials at the state level, you need to look at the state of Ohio and figure out how you can reduce the red tape, reduce the regulatory burden, reduce bureaucracy, get government out of the way, and people will prosper and thrive. And that's the American system. States are different. You got federal laws and things that come down that everybody has to play by those rules. But we got 50 states, so they're little independent experiments, and that was kind of the beauty of the American system. Is if Massachusetts is a big government, liberal, anti-business, whack job state, well, you can move down to Florida, or you can move to Tennessee, or you can move to one of these free market, smaller government, stuff like that. Ohio's got to realize that. Ohio's got to look at very closely at its policies that they have had in place largely only for the last 50 years. So we're not, changing anything that, goes back to the foundation of the state in 1803. A lot of this crap was put in place within the last 5 decades. So there's more than enough reason to say, hey, this hasn't been around that long in the grand scheme of things. Let's make some changes here. And stuff like that with, all the restrictions on building codes and everything. Come on. People are not going to be spending money and building, some structure that's going to collapse if a stiff breeze hits it. That's just not how it works. So we don't need all this paternalism from government, all this red tape, all this regulatory burden, maybe a little bit of oversight, but make it work. Make it work. So,
yeah, one
final thought, Ralph.
Yes, you said that Ohio needs to realize that people have a choice; they can go to another state. And I think that Marion also needs to realize that people have a choice. They can go to another city, which they do. We need to make the business atmosphere in Marion conducive enough that people want to come here. And trust me, if you get the right people coming to Marion, other businesses will be attracted. If we can get a magnet business in Marion, other businesses come with it. And that's what we need to do. We need to make our community attractive enough so that we have the economic development that makes other people want to come here too.
Amen. That is the proper role of municipal government and economic development. Just make your policies conducive to business and investment. And it's like the old movie, Ralph. If you build it, they will come.
They will come.
So let's hope they do.
Yep.
All right, folks. Well, we've had a great conversation with Ralph Smith, the current at-large city councilman for the city of Marion, who soon to be in January switching over to represent his home ward, the 3rd ward, as city councilman. So thank you, Mr. Smith, for joining us once again on the Watchmen's Report. I'm sure you'll be back on again. We've got plenty of conversations to have in the future.
I don't need that.
Appreciate it.
And I'm not sure. Are we having a broadcast tomorrow night, Jason?
If they release the auditor estate stuff, we'll probably have a pop-up, at least quickly.
Okay. Yeah, that's another big thing.
Yeah.
So potential for the auditor estate, the findings, corrective action, all that good stuff to come out. If it does, then tune in here for a pop-up broadcast. But that's it for the evening. So once again, for our special guest, Ralph Smith, for Jason Foreman, I'm Cody Higley, and this has been the Watchmen's Report. And remember, a watchman is always vigilant. Have a good night.
Have a good night. Thank you, Ralph.